Greetings, this is Atma Buddha, and today is April 10th, 2022. The title of today's podcast is Episode 83, The Absolute, the Ultimate Individual. So we're going to experiment with having a video podcast. If you guys like it, thumbs up the video. We're going to see with no video versus video podcast, which is going to be more popular, which is going to have more views. And I'm going to be surprised or not surprised, depending on the results. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And by the way, if you've not seen the video with Hanjo and Ananda, I definitely recommend that you watch that podcast episode 81. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the written portion. Here we go. The absolute, the ultimate individual. The absolute is a unique singularity that is the best in all things. I call it the ultimate individual. When we discover ourselves more deeply, we recognize our connection with the absolute, which makes us even more of an individual. It is the best potential for all things, and yet it is so unique that it makes each individual not the same, but more unique. For each individual, there is a different flavor of best that can be only experienced by that person. The best is not just an idea. It is who you are, the truest version of you. The absolute has free will, and those who become liberated also have free will, just like the absolute. Otherwise, it is not liberation. You can be in harmony with the absolute while also pursuing excellence or not in whatever discipline you choose. For example, it is possible to be a champion of any sport without being an individual. If you have no ambition and willing to satisfy yourself as being, quote, nothing special, then the philosophy of, quote, no free will, unquote, may be a good fit for you. If, however, you feel called inwardly to excel and be a pioneer or champion in a discipline, you literally cannot do these things without acknowledging your individuality. It is only by removing the limited conceptions of who you think you are that you can truly become limitless. All roads lead back to self. It is inevitable. Choice is an illusion. From my perspective, nothing physical is conscious. What we experience through our senses is just the outer manifestation of consciousness. The concept of all is nothing means that all physical reality is just the illusory container that life chooses to express itself as. It is one lens. Free will alone is not liberation unless in endless inspiration. The absolute truth is one when your mind is tapped into it, or rather, it is tapped into you. A symbiosis occurs because bliss is an ocean in which every mind can swim. There is no compulsion on anyone to feel love and bliss. However, you can't feel love by being disconnected from your own heart. You can't feel inspiration if you are disconnected from the one living truth. True hierarchy is not about crowning some outside force as Lord. It is about crowning the best version of you. The fact is that the absolute pervades all. It is a benevolent force that wants to empower and liberate. Why does it do this? Because it is the ultimate version of you. It is so all-powerful and immutable because it exists always, even before the creation of physicality itself. It is the creator. But deeper than that, it is inescapable because it is the formless you. This vast ultimate is not the final anything. It is ultimate because there is nothing better than it. It is incomparable and there is nothing outside of it. It is greater than any mind or entity. No physical being can fully represent it. This is why it is one, and yet it can be the truest version of each of us at the same time. The love itself is an emanation of this absolute truth. To oppose this is to fight your very heart and be against love itself. I have no misunderstandings about this, and when you finally get it, you will realize that there are only two sides to be on: the winning side or the losing side. The only losers are those who stubbornly cling to their delusions, and even they will be swept up in the tide of bliss that is happening right now. And that concludes the written portion of the podcast. And I'm just still getting familiar with the setup of using a webcam in making this podcast. I don't even know how to tell how many minutes have passed. Oh, there we go. So we're about 7 minutes in. Awesome. And so now we're going to just do some free talk and go deeper into this, the absolute, the ultimate individual. And this really is the crux when it comes to spirituality. I know that there are different schools out there, like with non-dualists, and they believe that in order to be enlightened, you need to sacrifice your individuality and merge into the nothingness. Or maybe some Buddhists, they believe that it's about emptiness. And I agree that your mind needs to be empty first. That's a prerequisite. But beyond that, when you are in this direct inspiration of the absolute, it is mind-blowing. This is not mere peace. It's like feeling inspired all the time. It's like feeling, bliss doesn't do it justice. It's ecstasy. It's euphoria. It's every moment being a celebration. It doesn't matter if you're at a funeral or a wedding. You carry this feeling, however inappropriate outside it might be, with you everywhere. And nothing has the power when you're in this state to unsettle you. You can experience this all the time. And so why do we say the absolute is the ultimate individual? Well, because the absolute is a singularity, okay? It's not a collective consciousness. It's not a group. It is a singularity. And from what I understand and what's been revealed to me, the intention of the absolute is to have every individual be able to share and experience this high. And this high also includes love, unconditional love, so that you can be shining in this radiance and yet have no limitations, no rules, no dogma to follow, no mantras to recite, no set amount of prayers you need to read, no dictated Bible studies or attendance in church for your salvation, no confessioning booth. You are independent. And that is what the absolute is. The absolute is independent. The absolute is an individual. And thus it is natural that the absolute wants for you what it already has. And that is why the more of an individual we become. But first of all, and I talked about this before, but there's this old adage, know thyself. What does that mean? Does that mean know God? No, it doesn't. It means go within. Know who you are. Know yourself inside and out. And when you do this deeply, what you will discover is that within you, there are no limits. That you have the power to achieve for yourself whatever you feel inspired to do, whatever you feel love to do. And why is that? This brings us to the concept of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The macrocosm would be the absolute God's superconsciousness. The microcosm is the individual. And so when in mystery schools they say as above, so below, that means the absolute, which is the truest version of you, wants you to experience the unlimited potential that already exists within you. And that is the spiritual path. All roads lead to self. And we're talking self with a capital S, as also known as your super self. If your day-to-day is Clark Kent, who you truly are is Superman. Just like a caterpillar eventually can metamorphosize into a butterfly, just imagine what level of transformation is possible to you as a human. You can be, in fact, who you are at heart. If you're watching this, you are more than you can imagine. There is no thought or idea that can encapsulate this magnificence within you. You are awesome. And that basically sums up what this YouTube channel is about and these podcasts. If you are on Spotify or Google Podcasts, I don't think we're on Apple yet, but we're going to get there. But the purpose of these podcasts is to reaffirm your awesomeness. You are awesome. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of inspiration. And guess what? You are not alone. You have the full force and might of the entire universe at your back. And that's great. That's amazing. Let's see how much time we got. We're at, okay, we got about 6 minutes or so left. All right, cool. So the ultimate individual is the absolute. And so the macrocosm is the ultimate individual. That means the microcosm, which is you, are an individual with the potential to experience the ultimate. Some people might say, everyone is enlightened already. And that's a great sentiment, and I would love that to be true. But Rome was not built in a day. You have the potential to be enlightened right now, right here and now. But it's not necessarily going to happen right this second. It's something that we all can continue to work towards. But one thing is for certain, it is inevitable. And the more you make this a priority, the sooner you are liberated. And so what we're doing here with this podcast, this YouTube channel, is trying to make things as easy as possible to make that transition into the ultimate reality, where every second of every day is an experience full of love, full of bliss, and that nothing external, no matter what toxic environment that you find yourself in, that nothing has the power to take that away from you. And that it's only our limited conceptions of who we are, that, or who you are, who we all are. It's only our limited conceptions that get in the way of becoming limitless. And the more we identify with limitlessness and this amazingness that exists all around us, and we say, oh, this is who we are, then that's when doors start opening. And so on this path of being unlimited, what are the chief obstacles to overcome? Well, in my experience, that obstacle would be external desire. External desire, what that means is that whenever you feel incomplete, that means you're experiencing a limited version of yourself. I love this gesture, Chin Mudra. I mentioned that in the previous podcast. And that means being stubborn in your completion. And you can practice with a certain exercise by putting the Chin Mudra on your heart, like this, and doing a simple breath exercise where you're focusing on the corners of the breath. So after you breathe in, hold it for a second or two. After you breathe out, hold it for a second or two. Those are the corners of the breath. And by focusing on the corners of the breath, that's when you're at a place of limitlessness or breathlessness, as they also call it. And so the idea is by focusing on your breath and focusing your mind to a pinpoint and being stubborn in your completion, you can experience being complete yourself. And this may take a little bit of time to set aside some time for non-doing. I know this modern age is pretty crazy. Everybody's busy. You got so much to do. But what we forget to do sometimes is not do. Because it's through not doing that how you can get to that next level when you're not doing, when your mind is quiet. That's when inspiration can occur. When your heart is full of love, not desire. So the idea is to be motivated to do what you love, to do what you feel inspired to do, not do what you just desire, to have a deeper motivation. Because if you desire it, you are coming from a less powerful place. The most powerful people do not have these external desires ruling their life. They are coming from a place where the outside world cannot affect them, cannot impact them. And then, conversely, what happens is when you're coming from that complete place, you impact the world instead. And that's the power that is possible for you to have. And maybe you have it already. And maybe you're not consistent. And that's the beauty about this. This is inevitable for everyone. And you are awesome. And you feel free to visit divinity.com. This is the end of this video podcast. Until next time, you guys have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.